I've been charged again with so many conspiracies. I was charged of bombings in Manila again last time while I was in Boston. And the witness against me is a man I never met in my life. I never met this guy.
You were in Boston and they said you'd bombed in Manila?
I'm the mastermind of all of these things. And then last month I went to the Middle East to talk to our Muslim brothers who are also in the Philippines fighting Mr. Marcos. You see, about 100,000 Muslims have already died over the last 8 years. Mr. Marcos has lost about 9,000 Filipino soldiers. So I felt that I should do something to stop this killing, Pat. So I went to the Middle East at the request of the officials of the Philippine government to try to bring these Muslims to the government. And when I landed in the Middle East, headlines in Manila said, Aquino plotting another Holocaust with the Muslims in the Philippines. So all I wanted to do was try to bring peace. So anyway, I feel that there's a good Lord who watches over us and truth will out.
He sure does.
And so I'll face the music and I'll tell them exactly what has happened.
You know, there was a possibility, don't you think, of a communist takeover in 72 or 3, or was that magnified out of proportion?
It was magnified. There is a communist insurgency in my country, but it was not that big. However, I fear that if this continues, this corruption continues and this deterioration continues, people get frustrated and in desperation they might even cling to the radicals. Now that's what we want to prevent among the moderates in my country. We're still pleading with Mr. Marcos and we hope that the good Lord will enlighten him that the best way to bring our country back to democracy is to have clean and honest elections. And if he can win in a clean and honest election, so we rally behind him. But we believe that a government to be legitimate must have a clean and honest election. So that's the fundamentals of our democracy.
Sure.
So if we can have a clean and honest election and the people choose him, well, then we support him, and we will all be united behind the man that the majority chooses.
Tell me about your relationship with the Lord in this solitary thing. Something unusual happened spiritually to you.
Well, you know, I'm a Catholic. I was born a Catholic, and 85% of the Filipino people are Christians, as you know that. But we never really read the Bible as Catholics. I don't know why. And we were instinctively Catholic. We believed in God. But as a young man, I had no time for God. I was too busy with my politics. I was moving on, and I thought I was self-contained. I thought, you know, on my own steam I can make it. I only went to God when I needed His help, when the votes were coming in, and I'd say, Dear Lord, help me. But when the votes are in, I forget the Lord. But when I was placed in deep solitary confinement, nobody to talk to, I became desperate. And here I started to question the fundamentals of my belief. Firstly, is there really a God? I began to doubt that. I said, if there is a God, why should I be here? What have I done? Why are the crooks all out? And so I asked the second question, was there a God when the children were gassed at Auschwitz, at Buchenwald, at Dachau? Where was He? Where is this God? And people are dying in the Sahel. And that was the doubt that assailed my mind. But then I felt, there must be a God, because then all of this suffering will be useless. I mean, if I'm suffering like this and there's no God, who will ever reward me? Who will ever pay me back? So there must be a God. So I felt then, maybe it's a fool's consolation, I had to even invent Him if there's no God, because that's the only way you can survive. Without Him, Pat, you'll never make it. And as St. Paul said, I'm strongest when I was weakest.
Yes.
And I became strongest when I was down there on the floor, in solitary confinement, alone, and it's only when He came to me that I really felt strongest. And therefore now, I have survived all of my vicissitudes because I know that there's this God interceding for us.
I understand that you had Thomas Kempis,
yes,
Imitation
I had
of Christ.
The Imitation of Christ, but the book that really encouraged me to go into deeper thinking is Chuck Colson's Born Again.
Oh, yes.
You know, I read this book and I said, oh, this guy is just a phony, you know, it's a gimmick. He was a Nixon man and he wants to use this, you know, to win the good graces of people. And I read this, but the more I read it, and I saw it there, he said, if you sit down with a yellow paper and write down your blessings as against your heartaches and frustrations, you will always know that you're always ahead. But the tragedy with us human beings, we only remember God on the negative way.
Yes.
We know Him when we're suffering. But what about the daily gifts that He gives us? The family, the children, the food, employment. We don't count that. So it was Chuck Colson who opened up my mind to this. And then I saw him in your program. So I started reading. So one day I was flying from Boston to Washington. And here's this man sitting down beside me in the plane. And I looked over and I said, excuse me, are you Mr. Colson? He said, yes. Oh, how did you know me? I said, I saw you in 700 Club and I read your book. And your book helped me. And we started talking, you see. And it was this man who showed me the way, and I told him I must apologize, I said, because, you know, when I first read your book, I thought you were a phony and you're a gimmick. But now that you're in your prison fellowship, really dedicating yourself to the Lord, I said, that's the greatest thing. And, you know, I said, Chuck, I want to make a confession too. God gave me a gift, I said, a gift to articulate that brought me to the pinnacle of political power. I promised him in prison, I said, that if and when I regain my freedom, I'd like to use this gift now to witness for him. And look, I'm here, Pat. I mean, a year ago, who would ever believe that I would be sitting down with you? I was watching you. I was in solitary confinement and the death sentence. Now I'm here with you. And this is a miracle. I mean, you know, it's one of those things.
And the suffering did something, though. The suffering opened your understanding of God that you never would have had otherwise.
Well, Pat, suffering can do two ways. It can break you or make you.
All right.
In my particular instance, I welcomed it as an opportunity. With this suffering, I knew that God cared for me. Because if He didn't care for me, He won't make me suffer. But I knew that when He gave me this suffering in solitary confinement, away from my children, they would come in the afternoon and visit me once a week. And when they left, you know, my heart would be broken. But it's only then that I really realized the value of my children. God had to take them away for me to realize that value.
Sure.
So I think the message is, welcome your suffering, because God will never give you a suffering that will break you. It's only a manifestation of His love, I think, that He makes us suffer to really realize Him. Because when we are in glory, we don't know Him. But when we suffer, we remember Him. So I think that's the message.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Aquino is, of course, in the Philippines, very well known, and around the world as a man who is a leader of an opposition and a leader of freedom in his country, and who has gone through extraordinary things. Some of you may not have been in solitary confinement in a prison for 7.5 years and had a heart attack and things like that. Some of you may have been, well, it may be a bad marriage. It may be a situation where people have spoken about you falsely. It may be a situation where you've done something. Somehow you've just been crowded into this, the life, and you can't stand it any longer. And you say, why? I was just reading today in the book of Job, where many people came and tried to give explanations of why these things happen. Why did God break down the hedge? Why did He let Job be afflicted? And out of it all comes one clear message. Job said, I heard about you with the hearing of my ears, but now mine eyes have beheld you. I behold you, and I abhor myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. And after that, God said, you are my servant, Job. It's because I loved you that I let these things happen, because I wanted to give you a deeper understanding of me. And having given you that, then I'll give you back these other things. And lo and behold, Job had twice the possessions that he had before. And he was given great honor and lifted high. But there was a moment of testing and trial that had to come when the enemy assailed him. But out of that came something much more precious than the gold and the honor. The thing was the knowledge of God. He learned as he never learned before what he was and what God was. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're having a trial right now, just let this be the time that you look up and say, Father, I know that you're in control of things. I know that you love me, and I'll trust you. And as Job said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And I want to assure you, you can trust the Lord. He is absolutely worthy of all of the best that you have. We'll be back with more right